Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I'm super excited to be joined by current Tottenham Hotspurs head coach and former head coach of Bika Häcken in the Swedish league. It is none other than Robert Vilahamn. Robert, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Just had a training in heavy rain, but I'm getting dry now, so that's good.
That's good. You do not want to be doing a quick chat as you are wet because that is never too fun. Robert, I kind of wanted to start with a bit of an icebreaker here because you have a set of twins, a boy and a girl. And I too am a boy and a girl set of twins. What is the best thing and not the best thing about having twins and raising twins?
I think it's very effective to get two kids in one, so you can actually go through all the phases in once. But it's also like you start to compare them quite much, and you see
Mm,
the similarities and a lot of differences between them. And I'm not sure if it's always boy and girl differences, but between them you can actually tell there's a lot of big differences. And I just love to have two different kids that are so not similar, and still
yeah.
they are twins. And I see the band that they actually are. They're liking each other and they hate each other in the same time. No, it's nice.
It is very nice. You're right. I feel like parents are always very happy when they get a boy and a girl at the same time because it saves so much worry already. Um, but I kind of wanted to jump into a little bit more of how you got into coaching. You were obviously playing yourself, but you also you went to university and got a master's in PE and geography. So you were kind of both a student and a player. I'm assuming there was a lot of decisions to make, and I guess you went into coaching. So how did that look like for you on your side of things?
I think it was became my backup plan because I didn't become the player I wanted. So I was a huge talent playing in the youth national team in Sweden and the best team in Sweden, and went on trials to Wimbledon in England and everything. So I was a super talented player, but I couldn't take care of that talent.
Mhm.
And you can blame the coaches I had, but I think it was more like I was amateur. I didn't really know how to take care of it. So in a quite early age, when I was like 21, 22, I realized that my friends were professional footballers out in Europe, and I was
Mhm.
struggling in the next highest division in Sweden, and
Yeah.
realized that I might not reach the dream to play abroad. So I kind of went for the second plan, and that was to become a coach. And to do that, I knew that okay, I'm gonna put a lot of years here to make sure I can become that. And become a teacher is quite a good combination. So if I don't succeed, I can still be a teacher and work with people. And PE teaching is basically the same as being a coach, but you don't really go in that professional environment, right? But so I started at university and just went to a club where I could be a playing coach when I was 23, 24. And then I took the long way to become a teacher and a coach, and then working myself day in, day out to make sure I reach my goals.
Was it difficult to balance out that player coaching role? Because I feel like nowadays in the game, you see a lot of coaches start from that role, kind of transition from players to become player coaches. Is that the common thing in Sweden? And is it difficult to be able to understand what your full role is? Because you're still a player, but you've got coaching duties at the same time.
I think those who are playing in a really high level, they
Mm,
get like a free entrance to the coaching career sometimes because they were a really good player and they are a good person. And I get that. I totally get that. They can also get easier way into the training courses in Sweden as well. So if you have a really good career, you can actually go directly into a training course, which is shorter.
mhm.
And I kind of lost the high division playing. I played in the highest division 1 year, but I was still like a semi-professional player. So I needed to go the long way. And I think when you do that, you're learning so much more than the players who just played and get back. And I was learning a lot from my work experience and education experience and everything.
Mhm.
So me as a coach today, I think I'm quite different to many coaches who went from the playing career to the coaching career. So I bring a lot of experience in my life into my coaching career. So all of from being a coach, being a teacher, being a parent to twins, traveled a lot, meeting different culture. So I think I'm adding everything to become a really good coach. And I hope that will be more fun to work with me than just the players who was player then become a coach, because I think I can see the whole picture a little bit more. Then of course it's good examples of great players who became coaches as well. But the main thing for me, this is my way, and I kind of like that.
And you just mentioned earlier that you couldn't take that full professional step because it was the coach's aspect around you. Being that player that didn't feel like your full potential was fully put on because of certain coaching techniques. Has that taught you lessons where you're able to put that in your own coaching?
Yeah, I think so. Many people ask me who was my inspiration as a coach and what I follow. And sometimes it feels like I'm following the opposite of the coaches I had. Doesn't mean that they were bad coaches. It just
Mhm.
felt like they didn't suit me and how I was. And I was not like the best kid in the world. I was not really professional. I was not listening to the coaches, but I needed help from them that I couldn't get. And perhaps I didn't deserve it, but I want to make sure I find ways to reach most of the players until, until they make sure that they become the best version of themselves. And for me, it's like, if they show me passion, if they show me that they are willing to do this and being professional, then I will try to help them in my ways to find the right way. And of course, if you're not professional, if you don't really show me that you have the attitude, then it's hard to work with a
Mhm.
player like that. But I'm trying to see myself in them and see if I can reach them in different ways. And I think
Mhm.
that's similar to being a teacher. When you are in the classroom and you're having, whatever you have, you should convince so many students that this is fun, this is, giving you inspiration. And I think that gives me a lot of good knowledge how to try to reach different people, because you need to reach them in different ways. You cannot just treat everybody same and think that everybody's going to learn in the same way.
That's really interesting to hear because often, again, we always talk about managers and their tactical abilities and what they're able to convey on the pitch. But that work that happens with the players one on one, kind of talking in the locker room, uh, how, I guess, important is that in how you conduct your managerial work? But also, like, is it a little bit more challenging than the actual stuff that we see on the pitch? Like, is that the tough part, or is it kind of just as much as the tactical and kind of running sessions and everything that comes with an actual ball?
I think different coaches have different approaches what their
Mm,
style is. Some people want to be that really football brain who have the technical skills and everybody. Some want to be that really good leader, and somebody want to be something else, right? So if you look at my strategies to find freedom in the way we play, but have structure, have a game model that's really clear, but in that to find the X factors in the players. So if you have the 4-2-3-1 in Häcken, and I had Rosa Kafaji as the
mm,
perfect 10, and I didn't need to teach her how to handle the ball, how to play the through ball. I needed to work with her how to be more mature, how to play with the teammates, how to build the fitness, how to not be too focusing on the negative and everything. So then you need that skill, right? And then if you have a really good character, then you need to work with her perhaps more with the technical part and everything. So I think for me, it's not being like, I don't want people to see me like the best tactical coach in the world, because I don't need that. I want to be the perfect coach to inspire and help the people to perform in a team, right? So
yeah.
I just hope that people feel like they can be themselves and express themselves with their football in my way, and that's through that we're going to win, instead of them telling the fans that, yeah, we have the best tactical coach in the world. I
Yeah.
know tactics, and I want to make sure that we have a good tactics, but I just want the players to feel like they can play the freedom and develop the best way they can.
Is that how you approached developing youngsters? Because, like you mentioned, there was a handful of those that you were working with at BK Hacken, and now in the Spurs coach and the Spurs squad, apologies. There was ones that you came in and found, and there's ones that you've been able to bring in through the window. Um, and it's funny because we always say that you need a coach who is able to develop young stars, and that means so much. But for you, is this something that you take pride in and put a lot of focus in your work, is working with these youngsters to really get the most out of them?
I think so. I think coming from a teacher working with youth kids, I think when you work with young players,
Hmm.
those are, especially this new generation players who, was born and raised and actually go into this new era of women's football. So it's a different story for those who are 20 now or those who are 35, because if you go back 15 years, it was a different, stadium, was a different stage for the women's football. So if you go to the younger
Hmm.
ones who actually are growing into this new era, I think you have a lot of benefits to work with them, because they are a little bit more exposed to it, and they're also going to be here for more years than the older ones.
Hmm.
So if you look at that way, it's very fun to work with these young players. But on the other hand, I work with Ivy Luik in Häcken. She's 38 now,
Yeah.
and the last year she was just, she's playing her best football now. So the age doesn't matter. I mean, you should still just pick the right characters and everything.
Hmm.
But if you look at it in a long term, if you're going to work in football for a long time, of course, it's easier to work with young players, because you can have a benefit from them in more years than the older ones. So, but I
Yeah.
also think like the mentality today, when you're born and raised in this, the society is changing. And I think if you look at Grace Clinton, for example, and how she drives herself to become, the best player in the world, and you
Hmm.
see that, and you know that you can guide her and help her because she has the talent for it. That gives me some really like, yeah, I really want to do that, because this gives me energy, and I need energy to give back energy to the squad, right? So I need
Yeah.
those players. It's very important. Otherwise, I cannot be the coach I want to be.
Was that a lot of consideration from when you decided to move that to have that move over to Spurs, because it kind of happened like midway through the season with BK Häcken, and Spurs didn't really have their best season last year, and I think everybody understood that there was going to be a lot of changes. For you, what were the certain aspects that you were considering, but also was there pressure in coming into environment that was expecting a bit of an over a turnaround, I guess, from last season?
I think all my choices when I become a coach was to have a clear plan for my future and try to be sharp in my decision making. So if I just go back to 3 jobs away, then I was in an academy team under 19, a boys team in Sweden. They
Mm.
were just also like reconstruction because they were not in the best phase. And then I went to that job and make sure, okay, we can start building from the ground here. We can start doing something.
Hmm.
And then after those 2 years, we were promoted to the highest division. We won that. And then I was like, okay, now I'm done with this. I've done this. And then I went to senior football and took over a team that was relegated because of bad economy. And then I brought these young players from that academy to this senior level.
Yeah.
So I basically worked with young players again, and we started to win. And then I was like, okay, I find a concept how I want to work. I want to play good football,
Yeah.
attacking football, young players, develop them, and perhaps sell them to the next level, right? And then I became my first professional working with Beko Häcken's men's team in the highest division. And that was more like to make sure I know if I'm good enough, if I'm professional enough. So to go into that environment was to feel like, do I know everything but T-based data, the analyze and everything? And when I was there, I was like, okay, now I know how to act. Now I know the level. Then I got the job with the women's team in Häcken. We took over Gothenburg FC, which was the biggest team, and they were the champions. And I had to do the same thing there because now I needed to know women's football and this team. And then I realized these players here didn't play the Häcken style, the way we want to play. Some of the players didn't handle the way we want to play.
Hmm.
And then we kind of had a bad first 6 months. We didn't really perform the way. And then I had to take a decision again. We need to probably sign a few young players or good fit players that can play the way we want to do it and then do this journey. And then it took a year before we got to see the results. So we was doing an excellent play with Häcken, with young players and a few
Hmm.
older ones. And then
Yeah.
I was not done there because we didn't win the league. We were top on the
Yeah.
table. We should do the Champions League qualification. But then, I started to look abroad because I felt like I was ready for it, but I also felt like I was happy where I am. And then this job came up, and I felt like, yeah, Tottenham is this big club, but they don't really succeed, and they're actually struggling right now.
Hmm.
That could be the next step for me because it seems like they want to do the next step in their journey to make sure they have an identity and
Hmm.
refresh the team and everything. And when I had the interviews with them, I just felt like, yeah, they want to recruit me to do what I have done before. This is a perfect match. And then I was more like, yeah, I don't need to go there and win the first year because they not expect that. They would expect me to do the process and everything.
Hmm.
And I'm looking for that. I think I'm more of that kind of a coach. I just take over the best team in the world and just win the title. That
Yeah.
would be fun as well. But I think this suits me very well. So when this, when it was a perfect match, yeah, then we went for it. And now I'm in this journey again. I'm just feeling like, yeah, this is so fun because you do something more than just trying to win a title. You create some kind of evidence that you make a club on the highest level for the long time. And I think that's what triggers me.
It's a lot of building that we've seen, and I think it's been fantastic to also see how quickly that's happened. And you've always referenced wanting to play and wanting to showcase the Hotspurs way. What does that mean to you? Like in your own words, what is the Hotspurs way?
It starts with to dare is to do. That's the slogan for Tottenham Hotspurs. And if you look at that, then you should always dare to take those brave choices in the play. And I think being brave is to have a build up where you can play through their press. That's for me being brave. It's not just kick long and hope for the best. It's having attacking football because I think we try to brand ourselves to be an attacking team. We try to make sure we fill the Tottenham Hotspur stadium. We try to make sure that young people want to come here because we play an attractive football.
Yeah.
So for us, being the Hotspur, the Spurs way is basically try to make sure we have control of our performance and development by actually playing a certain style, which means that we dictate the games
Yeah.
and that we are a high pressing team because we want to have the ball. We want to make sure we do it. And then if you go down the next phase, then it's like, yeah, it's different stories. If you compare to the men's team, we don't do everything in the same way.
Yeah.
But I think the fans should come and watch the men's team and the women's team and feel like, whoa, it's attacking football. They play with bravery. They want to score more goals. They don't just defend when they have 1-0. And that's the approach of the club and the identity, basically.
Has there been a favorite game that you coached so far in the WSL or with English competition that you remember and you're like, yeah, that was a great night?
I think it's like you said, we started very well. I actually think the first game against Chelsea, you didn't know what to expect. My first game in this league, Stamford Bridge, the best team in the world, ish. We play against them, and we should try to play out from the back. We should be brave, and we started that game very well, and we played with bravery and created chances, and then they scored a goal and it was like, damn it. And then we started the second half very poor because they were so good in the beginning. And the second half, and they scored 2-0. I was like, oh, it's going to be 5-0 now, and I'm going to look stupid here. But then we came back and we just scored a goal, and we were almost scoring 2-2. And everybody was feeling afterwards like, wow, we can play football with this team. And it was basically the same players as last year. So
Hmm.
that's the that's like one of the big moments for me, like, oh, this team has so much potential, right? And then we had a good 4, 5, 6 games where we just kept going for
Yeah.
that. And then we got a few injuries. We played against top teams again, and we were smashed against Man City and Man United. And then, of course, we need to fix the defense a little bit more and everything, and
Mhm.
still keep the focus we are. And then next, we're beating Arsenal, which was probably the best feeling this year, because beating them in that big stadium the first
Yeah.
time was powerful for me and for the club. Not the best game. We didn't dictate the game; they dictated, but we showed that we could defend with bravery and make sure we did it for the club. And then we scored this amazing goal that game, which was also nice.
Yeah.
So we showed that we can do it our style, just short period of time.
Yeah.
So I think, and then you have glimpses, in Brighton,
Mm.
in Aston Villa way, that we play very good football, and then we cannot do it for 90 minutes yet, and that's fine because it's going to take time. And then we came to the window now when we knew that some players were disappointed they don't play too much, and I respect a lot of these players in this league, and they deserve to play more. And if they want to go on a loan or whatever, that's fine because that's
Mhm.
part of the football wise. And then we could recruit a few players that suits the way we want to play.
Yeah.
And now we went to the next phase with basically new relations, new strategies, and setback against Villa last time. And I think that was the first game actually that I feel like we didn't reach the level, play the level we want. But
Hmm.
we're going to have a few of those games this year, and I'm fine with that as long as we keep going. But once in a while, if you look at the whole season, it's more glimpses of each game that we are
Hmm.
good, not the completely good one. And I
Yeah.
think that's fine. But you can see that the players buying into it, that they want to do it, and the club want to do it. And I'm learning as well. This league is a new league for me, and the new stadiums, we play wintertime. We don't do that in Sweden, for example. And
Yeah.
I'm learning very much. I think the first year will be a very good learning process for me to get to know this league in a good way.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, it's a lot of phases, it's a lot of pieces of the puzzle, glimpses here and there, putting it all together and seeing that final project. So absolutely it takes a lot of time. And you mentioned kind of that switch to the WSL. What are some of the biggest differences that you've noticed from the Swedish league now to the English one?
I think when I went into the women's football in Sweden before the men's football, that was like I realized how hard some games in the women's football could be without knowing. To go to Vittsjö, for example, that's like a terrible pitch, and you go there and they just play long balls, and then you went up to North playing Numeå. So I was learning that league first, and then when I realized how to find ways to win those games, you kind of knew when you were a top team in Sweden, you basically win most of the games with 3-4-0 if you have a good game. If you have a
Yeah.
bad game, you still win that with 2-1 or something like that. And if you have a really bad game, you lose or draw. But when I came to this league, I realized you don't win any game if you don't actually step up and doing everything well, because all the teams is very competitive. Even Bristol City, West Ham, they have good players, good squad, good
Mhm.
coaches, good tactical ability. So it's a very competitive league, and it's high tempo, and it's so much bigger than Sweden. So it's more like more people to coach. The
Mhm.
squads is bigger. The staff is triple what I have in Häcken. So it's a lot of more people to coach and lead, and that also is a learning process for me to how to do that. In Sweden, you basically have your tight small team, and it's a little bit easier in the smaller picture in Sweden. But I think the potential here is so much higher. So it's a fun project.
Yeah, it's more bodies that you're working with, which I think is so interesting. It's not just the players, but it's the staff. I want to take it back a few steps, and you've mentioned it here. Obviously, your first senior team that you worked with was the men's Bika Häcken and then the women's. And I know you always get this question so regularly, but what was, I guess, that difference from men's football to women's football? And is it really as different as many of us think it is?
I think I had a approach that it's what's different. It's football, it's tactic, it's press, it's 4-2-3. You know, and it is. You know, it's
Hmm.
nothing different with football wise because it's actually tactics and press and GPS data. But then you realize, first of all, it's actually to go to a new market, because I didn't know so many women's players. I knew the men's player, and when you work with the men's football, you watch men's football. Now when I work with women's football, you know the women's player, and I didn't know so many men's players in Tottenham when I signed it, for example, because you're so into where you are. So the first phase to go from men's football to women's football was to get to know all the players and all the teams and what they do. I think one of the biggest thing was I didn't know the history of women's football so much. I didn't know how short period of time they've been professional and where they came through and how much they actually have been working to get more equity and everything. So that was also something I needed to know so I can understand the players more. Otherwise, it's hard for me to listen to more, understand everything. So the first year I had a second coach who was a man as well, and he also used to work in men's football. And then I realized, no, I need more people that been in the women's football, and I also need female people around me, because you need to have both gender, because it's a difference between gender in one way. And that was the first step I needed to know. And then when you get to know that, you know also like it's different bodies, it's different strengths, it's different crosses, it's different shooting aims, it's different tallness in how people are. And when you realize that, then you need to make sure you go to your tactics and make sure you kind of develop that to the women's football. It's still tactic, it's still stuff, but you need to know, do you score more goals from early crosses or late crosses, or cross balls or whatever. And when I learned that, then you can maximize your tactics basically. So it is a big difference. And then if you go to how men and women are generalizing that, it's also more discussions about why do we do this, why do we do that. And I think that's connected to school as well. When I was a teacher, I knew that most of the girls getting better grade than men in all the subjects except PE. And there's a reason for that in Sweden. It's because girls in school are much more focused and listening to the teacher and want to know and learn, and then they do it, and then they go to the university. Many of the men are good, or boys are good in PE, because you play those sports where you have if you're strong or if you're really quick, you have a benefit, and that's why they have a better grade. So the PE teachers do wrong stuff there. And when you realize that, then you need to make sure, that, okay, I'm working with people that perhaps have an education from the university, actually. A lot of players in Häcken had that. Then you need to make sure you explain even more why we do this or that, because if they buy it, they're going to do it. If they don't buy it, they're going to question me. And if they question me, it's going to be like, okay, what happened now, right? So when you learn that, then you can be very sharp in the discussions. You can actually open up the team talk much more with the players. And for me, working with women is a lot easier, because you can basically give them more communication and more feedback and everything. And on the other hand, I just need to make sure to get to know them and how they speak and what they think and everything. But it's a lot of fun to work with women, I would say.
You mentioned that a lot of the players had university degrees. So obviously, a lot of them, it wasn't just football that they were doing. They had to do different things at once. Was that, I guess, another thing that you had to adjust, that a lot of these players had these obstacles around them of it was more than just football on their plate. There was other things that they had to consider, other things that they had to do because of the state of the women's game a few years ago, or even now, because not a lot of teams are at that professional standard. Not every single player can afford to just play football.
Yeah, I think that was the history of football. I realized that many players already had the occasion, because they knew that they're going to play for a few years. They might just not get rich on the football, so they need something to go back to after the game. A lot of men football players, they think they're going to be the best player in the world, so they go all in on the footballing, and then they take care of it afterwards. So that was a big difference. But actually in Häcken, everybody is full-time paid, but they wanted to have extra education anyway, because like I said, they understand the importance of having a backup plan in the future. So they took care of their courses in the afternoon or whatever. And I think, and I know when I was a player, I kind of didn't understand how to take care of my talent. But when I went to the university, that was when I learned how to be a better person, reflect on stuff, ask stuff. And I think when players do that, they become better footballers as well. So I'm kind of love when people doing that in the spare time, if they have time and energy and everything, because you get more smart players that can
Yeah.
handle different areas. So I think it's I love that if you have the time. And I love that they're also now getting the salaries they deserve, so they can actually also, buy a nice house or make sure. But I still think you should have an education anyway, because they're going to work a lot of years after their career. So I think
Yeah.
both men and women should do that if they can and have time and energy. But I just think the women is taking care of that much more than men.
And it's funny how it's reflected with how you get to work with them. Another thing that I wanted to ask is a lot of coaches in the women's game mention this, and you've even spoken about this, is that when you get to work with these different environments, you get to see the certain aspects of the structures to how players can become professional. You see these two different pathways, what the men's have and what the women's have. And you've been a huge advocate about that game. What are certain things that you strive to do in terms of inspiring and changing those pathways that you've works very closely with at the same time that you also have a son and a daughter who will have to take different routes if they want to become professional footballers.
I think, gender equity is a very important thing for me. When you get twins and a boy and a girl, and you realize, like, if they train as much as they do and they become the best football player in the world, my son and my daughter, I know that my son going to have so much more money and so much more exposure, and my daughter will not. And I'm like, that's not fair. I mean, why is that, right? So then I get it. But why it is now is because of the money and how many people come there. But I just want to make sure that we treat people not like comparing gender. We treat them in the same way. And for me, then I took courses. I wrote my essays in the university about gender equity everywhere. So I kind of, I like that subject, because I think you need to speak about that so people understand. And when you do that, you can also have a huge impact. Especially, when I came to Häcken, they wanted to do this gender equity. We train on the same pitches and everything. But I'm also like, this for me, like, no discussion. We should have it that way. And when I do it in my role, I also get people with me, so they kind of, because they have respect for me coming from the men's football or whatever, and then you help that development, right? And now when I come to England, I see a big difference, because Sweden is quite far away with gender equity, and England is still, they still want to do it, and Tottenham want to do it, but you still see even more gender inequity, actually. And I
Mm.
can see now when my daughter and my son is starting to play football in grassroots level in England, it's so big difference, because Casper's team is training more times a week. They have more time on the pitch. They actually have a higher tempo. Everything is like a little bit more. But my daughter still have just trying to find a team that actually seriously want to train good, and she
Mm.
just want to train. So it's like, it's not fair. And then you realize we need to help out. We need to make sure we take the stand, take the fights. We need to speak up about that, and that's why I love England right now, because of what Arsenal are doing with the fans, what the Lioness is doing at Wembley, how we move the FA Cup to the Wembley Stadium, how we push into more games to the big stadiums, how we push to have gender equity, how Tottenham is doing now with this great journey with the women's team, and me and Ange is on this. They're showing me that they want to do it, and I know that I can now reach the highest level. I'm sitting with you now.
Yeah.
You're in Canada, so I have the whole world is my market now, and now I can actually make a difference. And I think that's driving me more than titles, I would say.
And not even just in England, but you're making a huge difference in a few continents across in Uganda, because you have opened an academy foundation there not too about actually, yeah, 2016 feels so soon, but it's so far away. And when you were talking about why you opened this up, and you mentioned that when you grew up, every single dream felt possible, but that's not the case everywhere. How has it been running that foundation and academy and seeing people actually get to enjoy sports in a different way?
I think, when I was at the university, we went to Uganda for 3 weeks to study developing countries and non-developing countries, and then we were like, wow, this is an amazing country. There's so many kids playing football everywhere, but they didn't have any equipment. They were barefoot, and they had a bottle or something like the kicked on. And I was like already a coach then, and I just realized I have so much stuff at home, and the club has so much stuff at home, and we just put it there in the storage and don't use it. And I was like, it would be fun to do something for someone else when it's so much spent in Sweden. And then I just like, no, I find a principal there, and we like, should we start an academy at your school so we can help more people to actually play football in a good way and start dreaming about actually becoming a footballer.
Mm.
So I just brought a few bags and a few friends. We went down there the first time, and it was like this big ceremony in this countryside in Uganda, and so many kids were so happy to play. And then it's like, I'm doing it for them, but I'm doing it for myself, because I get happy for that as well. I get energy. So then you kind of, everybody wins basically, right? And then you make sure that there's so many people who want to come with me to that place because it's a happy place. It's so
Yeah.
many nice people there, and then you bring people, and then you expand, and then you find sponsors and everything. And the main mission with that academy is nothing to earn any money at all, nothing actually to make them as the best footballer in the world. It's just to make sure that so many players that possible can enjoy the game and get the possibility to play. So that's my life project, and I just love that because it's so much energy that I get from it, and it's so much happiness from the kids and from the people around it. And so I just, every time I've not been there for a while, I just, dream to come back. And I'm going to go back in May, hopefully, and bring more equipment and make sure it continue developed.
And so you're working with folks and sponsors and fundings from Sweden, or is it like multiple organizations that you've been able to collaborate with?
Yeah, it's been different. Mostly football clubs in the Swedish league who are provided with clothes and shoes and balls and everything, and then sponsors with money as well sometimes. And I'm paying for the coaches' development so they can be training courses and everything. And sometimes I bring sponsors so they can also be part of it using their company, like
Mhm.
showing that they do good stuff for the company as well. And then I brought students when I was a teacher to go there for 1 week in that school, and I brought my family one year. And I just love bringing people so they know that you don't need to be afraid of that different country or continent.
Yeah,
You can go into the middle of Africa and meet so nice people. And so I'm very multicultural. I love meeting new culture. I love having people from different culture around me because I think the energy you get in the room is amazing. And I want to have a Tottenham Hotspur where we have people from all over the world in the squad, because I think you get a dynamic that's you can never get from any different space. And I think London is a great example how you meet people from all over the world. And
yeah,
you don't really talk ill about anyone. I just feel like it's a good multicultural city.
for sure. I 100% back up the idea of diversity in teams because not only do you get different characters, different mindsets, different perspective, it definitely gets reflected on the football. Robert, thank you so much for joining me today. Best of luck for the rest of the season. Hopefully, not too many games against Manchester City coming up because it feels like you've played them one too many times. And I think it's going to be very exciting to follow the foundation in Uganda and just see it completely explode over. And it's going to be super fantastic for these kids over there that are benefiting from it.
Thank you so much.